Welcome to our fourth review of Revelation using David Chilton's Days of Vengeance, a terrific commentary. We're using other sources as well, but David Chilton's commentary is our primary source in this study. We want to delve in this fourth review. We want to deal with another introductory matter, and that is the nature of the book of Revelation. Revelation is an eschatological discourse, a comprehensive discourse. Matthew has its discourse. Mark has its own discourse in chapter 13. Luke has one in chapter 21. But John doesn't have an eschatological discourse, and that's because Revelation is his eschatological discourse. But we may ask the question, what is the nature of this discourse? What kind of discourse is this? What kind of genre is this that we're dealing with in Revelation? Well, some say that Revelation is an apocalyptic book. But Revelation is not apocalyptic because apocalyptic literature expresses themselves in unintelligible symbols. The symbols are given, but they're unexplained. And another element of apocalyptic literature is that it generally has no intention of making itself understood. In apocalyptic literature, there is no progress. And in fact, the acts of God are not even seen in the history of the world. But for John, his symbols, his use of symbols in the book were not unintelligible symbols. For John, they were rooted in history. They were rooted in Hebrew history, in the history of God's holy people. As Jim Jordan once stated, Revelation is a simple book if you know your Old Testament. But the problem, as we know, of course, in our culture is that very few evangelicals know their Old Testaments, with the exception of some Psalms and mostly the Proverbs. But for John, there is a dependent rootedness in the Old Covenant Scriptures. For John, Revelation is a prophecy. But it's not a prophecy to satisfy curiosity about future events. Rather, it's a prophecy to direct God's people towards right action in the present, in the first century, and for right action even in our time. Revelation is ultimately a prophecy book, is an ethical book. As John says in the beginning, chapter 1, blessed is he who reads and who hear the words of the prophecy and who keep the things, who obey those things that are written in it. So the nature of Revelation is not apocalyptic, it is prophetic, it is ethical, and it calls God's people throughout the book. It'll invite God's people to, in the first century, of course, and even in our own time today, the church today, the ecclesia of the 21st century, it calls God's people to live faithfully in our age, to fulfill our callings, and to obey God's commandments. So I hope this has proven to be helpful to you, and I pray you have a very blessed Holy Week as we lead on to a glorious Sunday of resurrection. The Lord be with you.